All right, everybody. It says I'm live. If you can hear me and see me, please let me know. But otherwise, welcome back to another Monday night where we're going to discuss a lot of things that are happening right now and things that we should probably pay attention to if we want to be prepared for whatever challenges they bring. So that's why we get together here every Monday. Thank you all for watching the replay, and appreciate the comments and all that you guys do, because I'm really bad about asking for that help, and it does actually help because I don't think everybody would want us to have all of these conversations on a regular basis. Do you? All right. So good to see everybody. Got 5x5 coming through. ND Prepper, good to see you. Harbor Prepper as well. Let's see. We've got Idaho Grown Prepper. Hey, all 5x5. Good to see you. Porky Prepper's here too. Joey P says 3x5. So, I guess I'm not doing as well as I would hope. Just so everyone knows, I am using a different microphone tonight. I'm hoping to kind of just beat those audio issues we were having last week. So let me know if it sounds better. And if not, maybe I can try to figure out something else. Let's see. We have audio issues again from Starox. So I'm trying my best here. I don't know why the audio is wanting to fight me so hard. It's something that I am trying to fix, and it's kind of hard for me to do the testing on it without getting crazy. So give me 1 second here. Let's fix that really quickly first, just so we can get into what matters. And can you hear me now? If you can hear me now, let me know. I am trying my best to just make things work. Okay, so I'm just trying to do it, because things don't want to hear what I have to say, possibly. All right, everybody says I am sounding much better now, so let's get this thing going. All right. Hey, I magically fixed it. It's like it's in the name or something. So let's see what we can do here. First and foremost, we know what's happening around the world, but let's review because it's been a pretty busy week and things have gotten a little bit dicier, just in my opinion. Okay. Let's see. Jay Kalpa says cuts out. I mean, in and out from ND Prepper. I'm not sure what it could be my internet connection, maybe more so than my audio. So either way, we're on microphone number 3 at this point. I think that we should be somewhere better than we were before, at least. I'm doing the best I can. Let's go ahead and get into what's going on tonight. All right. So we've got some interesting stuff happening around the world. We had the START treaty suspended by Russia, right? So Russia suspends only remaining major nuclear treaty with the U.S., which was the New START treaty. And basically, let's see, Putin, speaking in his State of the Union address, said that Russia should stand ready to resume nuclear weapons tests if the U.S. does so, a move that would end a global ban on nuclear weapons tests in place since the end of the Cold War. Explaining his decision to suspend Russia's obligations under the 2010 New START treaty, Putin accused the U.S. and its allies of openly declaring the goal of Russia's defeat in Ukraine. Right. So we understand that, of course, this is how it's going to be seen. And this is exactly what is happening. They're out of the New START treaty. So nuclear testing, everything else related to what used to happen during like the Cold War era can resume. And that should kind of tell you where we're at in the sense of relations, as well as maybe why that New START treaty was suspended, right? Not because necessarily that, to send a signal that we're all in a fight now, we don't like each other, but maybe they actually need to start doing nuclear testing, right? And that's something that you should definitely consider because, maybe they're trying to take the formal steps in order to do it properly so that if something happens, there won't be maybe the same knee-jerk reaction that there would have been otherwise. So these are things that we need to keep in mind. Rural 2IC, thanks, Magic, for the awesome content as always. The Rural Report supports you, my friend. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'm doing the best I can to bring everybody some information and get us ready and prepared. And honestly, a big part of these weekly conversations is just motivation. Like, let's motivate each other to keep moving forward and to understand some of the challenges that we face so that way we can kind of keep putting the foot on the gas pedal, right? So let's go ahead and go through the next part that, this is basically just a review of this past week. Some things happened today, some things happened 6 days ago, but we're just talking about how things are going in the sense of the march towards World War III. I mean, I don't even know what else to call it at this point, right? So we have Al Jazeera here reporting Russian plane destroyed near Minsk airfield. Belarus opposition was blamed, okay? The attack on the Russian surveillance plane comes amid increased cooperation between Minsk and Moscow, which is obviously in Belarus. Okay, a Russian A-50 military surveillance aircraft has been damaged in a drone attack at an airfield near the Belarusian capital of Minsk, according to Belarus partisans and members of the exiled opposition. Those were drones. The participants of the operation are Belarusian. Alexander Azarov, leader of the Belarusian anti-government organizational Bipol, was quoted as saying on Sunday on the organization's Telegram messaging app and on the Poland-based Belsat news channel. Okay, now here's the thing. They are now safe outside of the country, is what they're saying, right? So here's the thing. Anytime we're getting these reports, we have to understand that we're only given the information that we're getting, right? So obviously, anyone could be at fault for these attacks. Of course, there's always the old FF scenario that could be in the works as well. But this is just an escalation that involves another country within another country's borders, and it's something that we should pay attention to. And regardless of whether or not these are partisans within Belarus or whether or not it was some kind of force-on-force action from Ukraine, or if it even was just an inside job in order to help escalate things further, none of that actually matters at this point in time. All that matters is that we're getting other countries involved with kinetic scenarios happening on their soil, which means this whole thing is moving further and further outside of the perimeter that was established in the sense of Ukraine, and that's going to drag other countries into this mess a lot sooner. So all these things need to be kept in mind. And we also have to keep in mind that these drone attacks seem to be just something that's easily accomplished by just about anybody, apparently, because a drone attack took out an A-50 Russian jet, right? Or a military surveillance aircraft. I'm not sure if the A-50 is a jet or not, okay? Either way. Because here's the thing. A drone took this plane out, and they're blaming it on partisans. Just, basically, however you want to look at it, but, you could associate them with the same as, an extremist group or something like that. Like, these are not military groups, right? So just keep these things in mind, because this thing's spreading further past just military on military action as well, if everything being told to us is exactly as it's being reported. So interesting developments are definitely occurring right this second. Gen X Gemini says Magic Monday. It's a good thing. I like Magic Monday. That sounds kind of good, actually. I could work with that. DM says the draft is just around the corner in 2023. And unfortunately, that's possible. And especially if things really escalate between multiple different adversaries, I could foresee that happening very much likely because of the fact that we have completely missed recruiting goals. And our military just needs more people even right now, not just, in the middle of a global conflict. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Now, let's go ahead and move over here to what else is going on in that region, because there are some other things going on that aren't necessarily as exciting as a drone attack on an A-50 surveillance aircraft, right? Russia halts pipeline oil to Poland, says refiner PKN Orlen. Okay, this is according to Reuters, however you want to say it. We do whatever we do here. All right, Russia has halted supplies of oil to Poland via the Druzhba pipeline. PKN Orlen CEO said on Saturday, adding that the Polish refiner would tap other sources to plug the gap. The halt in supplies via the pipeline, which has been exempted from the European Union sanctions imposed on Russia following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, came a day after Poland delivered its first Leopard tanks to Ukraine, right? So it was told that there would be, consequences for these Leopard tanks being sent in. And of course, the consequences were cutting off natural gas or oil or any other energy source that Russia has control over, and in this case, obviously oil. And of course, Poland is saying already this is going to happen. Only 10% of crude oil has been coming from Russia, and we will replace it with oil from other sources. But the main thing that I wanted to take away from this particular is that not only is it a reminder that this arming of Ukraine is being considered, escalatory from the side of Russia, and that it's also, I guess, in their way of doing so, resulting in some sort of sanction in a way, right? Like they're removing their ability to have as much access to crude oil as they had before. So either way, everything now is a push and a pull. So support is provided, and then some kind of consequence comes out of that. And the problem that we're all facing is that this isn't going to just end, right? Like no matter how money or equipment we keep throwing at Ukraine, who needs it to defend their property or their country, Russia is going to keep going, and then they're going to keep trying to come up with other ways to punish the people involved with supplying those supplies. So this is kind of like a weird infinite loop that doesn't end in any meaningful way other than a catastrophe, right? And the main thing you should take away from this is that it's not that, okay, well, Poland lost 10% of access to crude oil. It's that Poland is being seen as escalating the situation, which means eventually every retaliation is going to grow in its level of danger, right? And that's what we have to pay attention to. Is like, okay, well, right now we're still just cutting off natural resources, right? We're cutting off, energy, but we're not necessarily dropping bombs. But at what point will they? Because Poland is, prime target area for being one of the first NATO countries that might be involved with this situation. And obviously, Russia right now is saying, all right, no more gas or no more oil for you. Okay, well, what's the next move if Poland keeps sending more Leopard tanks or sending more drones? Russia can only turn off so many taps of different types of resources they supply to Europe. So once all the taps are shut off, what's the next step? Right? Because then shut off all the taps, Poland figures it out somehow, and then they start supplying more things like F-16s or who knows what else. Then what does Russia do? There's no more taps to shut off. Right, so this is what you have to really consider in this situation. It doesn't end well. That's kind of what concerns me the most. Is as much as I'd like just like a peaceful resolution where Ukraine can just keep their sovereign territory and Russia will figure out that maybe this was all a bad idea or whatever you want to say. I don't see that being a likely scenario. I don't think any of us can actually see that being what happens here at any point in the future. And I mean, from what I can tell, it's not going to end that way. So let's see here. DJXJT13, first time I hit it live. Hey, well, welcome. I'm glad you made it. I appreciate it. And on Mondays, we do this because it's something that I think is important. We review the previous week. We talk about things that are happening right now. We talk about what to prepare for and what it is that, as preppers, we should strategize about moving forward, okay? These Nuts is here. I always like saying your name. We got Oki Khan here as well. Pink Dude, hello. Remember the small things like the northern lights. I'm watching outside in the cold right now from upper North Dakota. Yep, you can see them up here. I'm also in upper North Dakota. And it is interesting when you see those because it's definitely a natural event that is something you'll remember forever, right? And then we also have something else I wanted to mention over here. Randy Brown says, Poland has always been in the wrong place throughout history, and they are in a very tough place. You're right. They have constantly dealt with strife and turmoil, unfortunately, due to their geographic location. Not a good place to be. And, of course, there's a lot more than that just in there, but you know what I mean. Okay, Black Flag, good to see you. Chris Spivey, good to see you as well. So let's go ahead and jump into some other things that are coming out of this whole situation. So we just saw how Russia turned off 10% of Poland's crude oil, right? Or all Russia's crude oil to Poland, however you want to look at it or talk about it. What else is going on in the sense of like sanctions in Russia? Well, the U.S. is sanctioning Russia. And this was brought forward by my friend Rex, Taborosaurus Rex, who is a local out here in North Dakota as well. Guy has a really good playlist on learning how to do long-range shooting and stuff. And I've asked him questions in the past because I'm a layman in that regard, and he's a wealth of knowledge in that aspect. So Igor Vladimirov, let's try this again. Igor Vladimirovich Borisov is the developer of Straylock and Straylock Pro, mobile phone applications used for ballistic calculations, which have reportedly been used by Russia's forces in Ukraine. So the State Department is sanctioning, hold on, let's get up to the top here. Right? United States takes sweeping actions on the one-year anniversary of Russia's war against Ukraine. This is from February 24th. So the developer of Straylock Pro is being sanctioned because apparently Russians are using that app in order to make ballistics calculations. Now, I don't know how that all works out, but basically I use that app for ballistics calculations as well. So I'm not sure how this is supposed to help solve any issues or anything like that. But my biggest thing is that I think it's an excellent app, and it does a very good job of doing what I need it to do. And it's a little concerning that we're jumping into this next phase of trying to pull people into this situation that may have nothing to do with it. I'm not exactly sure. And just because Russia is using Straylock Pro, a ballistic calculating app, doesn't mean that it's not being used by Ukrainians either, right? They're probably using it too because it's a great 1-6 calculator app. I use it all the time. If the Ukrainians are using it to make sure that they're zeroed correctly in order to reach out to the ranges that they're encountering Russian soldiers at on a regular basis, I would assume that that's a good thing for them to have access to. So these are all interesting developments. But if you have Straylock Pro, which I highly recommend if you're worried about such things as being on target and making sure that you have the right, zero, whatever optics you're using, I would make sure to keep an eye on this whole situation because you might not have access to it eventually here. And here I am trying to find it again. It just disappeared on me. It's fine. We all read it. We all saw that it's on here. And here it is. Igor Vladimirovich Borisov, right? So I don't know what to say. It's unfortunate, but it's a very good app. Okay, that's all I can say about it. And you can look into that more if you'd like. But that's just what's happening. That's where we're at. So everybody's getting slapped on the wrist, and everybody's trying to figure out another way to punish the next person. And like I said before, just like with Poland getting their oil cut off from Russia, you just eventually run out of things to shut up, right? And that's when things are really going to take an interesting turn because what do you do then? We all know that in a self-defense situation, when you get backed into a corner, right, and you say, stop, leave me alone, don't touch me, right, well, whatever it is, at a certain point, your only option is to use force, right? And that's kind of what we're witnessing right now. Keep these things in mind, right? Now, let's see here. Little skillism. App won't make you a better shooter. No, but it gives you a lot of great information. So there's that. I'm just throwing it out there. I think it's got a lot of good information, and you can do a lot of research before you spend $1,200 on an optic to see if it's actually going to work for the application you want it for. So there you go. Anyway, moving on from there, what does Europe think about the current situation? Well, we have Sweden, okay, saying that their security police say Russia is the single biggest threat to the country. Now, this is the reason we're talking about this specifically is because we'll see what other parts of the world think about this situation as well, mainly related to the United States. But Swedish intelligence now sees Russia as the single biggest threat to the country's security. In a warning, the SAPO security service pointed to a more aggressive growth in extremism. Follows an earlier alert from Swedish military intelligence rating the current threat as the most serious and has been since the Cold War. The security service statement described Russia on Wednesday as the single biggest threat to Sweden. It's happened through infiltration and the influencing of decision makers, but also by building up an ability to create an alternative social structure. For example, to have an alternative power of order, said Susanna Tranhorting, deputy head of counterterrorism at SAPO. Okay. And they're worried about Russia and its destabilizing activities. All right. So we'll talk about that more here soon because this whole is presented as being total war and a collapsing power, right? The power grid collapse thing is something happening right now in a modernized country. But there's a lot of reasons to assume it could easily happen here for the same exact reasons, if not for more various reasons. And right here where you saw this destabilizing activities from Russia, this is where you really need to pay attention to why we should expect to possibly not have power at some point in time here in the relative future. And we will be talking about power grid collapse here in just a little bit. But we have a lot to go over tonight. There's a lot of things happening that we have to be aware of. Now, what do you think about the United States when it comes to our biggest threat? Well, you can look at this in a few different ways if you'd like. This Arctic U.S. airbase has its eyes on Russia, but climate is a bigger threat, right? So that's an interesting kind of change of ideas there. We have Sweden saying Russia's its biggest threat right now, no matter what. The Arctic U.S. airbase in Greenland is the only U.S. outpost that can monitor all of Russia's missiles, but thawing permafrost is undermining the station. So interesting. I mean, sure, climate might be a bigger threat to that particular station, but is it a bigger threat than Russia? I don't know. I mean, that's just an interesting way to phrase it, especially considering countries like Sweden are just straight up saying Russia's the biggest threat to them, not the climate. But hey, whatever it is, I mean, I think everybody is aware that there's a lot of things that could be detrimental to us in the sense of survival. T. Fisher, much love and blessings, Magic. Thank you for well, thank you, T. Fisher. I appreciate that. And just so you guys know, I appreciate super chats, I really do. But it's not required for me to help answer questions or anything like that. I just try to jump in the chat when I can, and I do the best I can when it comes to addressing everybody. All right. So But thank you very much for that, T. Fisher. I appreciate it. All right, so when it comes to this, Thule Air Base, Greenland. On last Saturday in September, ice had already begun to spread across the Arctic waters at the dock, closing the port for months to come. The temperature was 24 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow swept across the airport runway with 15-mile-per-hour winds, cloaking the base in a heavy layer of white. Snowplow rumbled back and forth the runway before the pressure wave descended. Officials had released a warning in the morning, categorizing the storm as an alpha level threat and cautioning that it would escalate to Charlie level the next day. Okay, so this is 900 miles south of the North Pole, and it's so remote it can only be accessed by charter flights, right? Now, here's the thing. What they're saying is that the climate is affecting the permafrost in the area, which is creating issues with the station itself, which will possibly hamper their ability to detect Russian missiles. That's basically the overall overarching concept of this article. Okay, but here we are. I mean, this is where we try to keep an eye out for what's happening there, and it's falling apart in some ways due to the climate, regardless of the reasonings behind that. This is something that we have to at least consider. And like I said, a big thing that I thought was interesting was the fact that we are forming this concept in the sense of the climate's the biggest threat versus Sweden saying that Russia was. And, obviously there's more to it than that contextually, right? But just so you're aware, structural engineers were on site last fall to assess the structural damage. There's a risk that the building will need to be permanently closed because of the possibility of collapse. Hopefully, we can put in enough safety mitigations to make sure we can get through the winter. We don't have to find an alternate location. Because as you can imagine, when it's dark out, you don't really have a lot of other places for folks to go to get together. But because of Russia's war with Ukraine and support missions the United States is running out of the base, such as its key ballistic missile early warning system, some renovations have been placed on the back burner, okay? A major renovation of Thule's radar has been scheduled, but has been indefinitely postponed because of the Russians' invasion. The radar couldn't be down during the heightened state, Foley said. So this is something else to keep in mind. We need this location in order to monitor those Russian missiles, and yet we can't make necessary repairs or upgrades because if we do, we have to shut down for a period of time, which goes back to the conversations we've had in the past about this war of attrition, right? So we are losing resources and the ability to resupply, even if you want to look at it in terms of repair or even update our equipment and our necessary components in order to actually strategically defend ourselves from a possible attack. And the longer this goes on, for the longer that radar isn't getting its necessary repairs, the longer or the bigger the chances that it will eventually break. And it'll have to go down and we'll have to repair it. And in that time, maybe that's the best time for something nefarious to happen, right? So these are things that we have to kind of keep in mind. Indubitably, yes, it is better that you're here. It's better that you're here, and even though you're late, we're not upset. Don't worry about it at all right? So, bringing all this to your attention now, what else is going on regarding our Air Force and our missile command, right? Because, I mean, it's a big deal right this second based on the fact that it's kind of a big threat we're all facing. Well, we just had this come out today. Air Force released 2 commanders, 4 leaders at North Dakota Nuclear Bomber Missile Base. Okay, and this is relatively local to where I am. So I had a little bit more interest in it just because I'm like, well, it says North Dakota in it. It must have something to do with where I live, right? We all like that when we the Air Force did not say why it had lost confidence in the commanders and leaders. And obviously, there's more to this than meets the eye. So we're going to talk about this a little bit because I think you have to keep some things in mind when it comes to the possibility of a conflict scenario. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit here, and then we're going to talk about other alternative reasons for why these things are occurring. Okay, the Air Force has relieved 6 leaders assigned to a North Dakota base in charge of nuclear missiles and bombers over a loss of confidence in military branches on Monday. Major General Andrew J. Guevara, commander of 8th Air Force, relieved Colonel Gregory Mayer of the 5th Mission Support Group and Major Jonathan Welch of the 5th Logistics Readiness Squadron, both based at Minot Air Force Base. The Air Force didn't identify the commanders, but an Air Force spokesperson confirmed their identities to task and purpose, which, okay, I didn't know that they were a straight up like journalism outlet at this point, but hey, good for them, So, the personnel actions were necessary to maintain the very high standards we demand of those units entrusted with supporting our nation's nuclear mission, said Guevara. Mayor Welch and 4 subordinate leaders relieved their command due to a loss of confidence in their ability to complete their assigned duties, the Air Force said. The Air Force did not specify why commanders had lost confidence in all 6 individuals. The 5th Bomb Wing operates a B-52H Stratofortress aircraft. which is one of the two types of nuclear capable bombers that the Air Force uses, the news outlet reported. So, what what do you think is going on here? Well, I kind of want you guys to kind of keep this in mind. Okay, here's the thing. There's a couple things that I think could occur in this situation that we need to kind of be concerned about. Okay, first off, you have commanders being removed from their position because they aren't capable of carrying out the duties that they have. And so, with some of these drills and some of the other things that the Air Force, I'm sure, does in the sense of missile command and making sure that we're completely ready for our nuclear triad, it's possible that they went through a live drill that was not necessarily demonstrated to be a drill, and that these commanders were unwilling to turn the key, right? Or who knows what, something along those lines, right? I mean, that's very basic at a very layman level there when I say turn the key, right? Like we've all seen war games and stuff, right? But what I'm trying to say is they might not have been willing to go the full distance when required to in some sort of a simulation. There's also the possibility that we're getting ready to make a move and the government decided they needed the right people in the right positions. And sometimes it means planting people that have a certain level of trust within certain organizations into some of these sectors to ensure that the plan moving forward is able to do so. And so we notice this, right, with Russia when they first invaded Ukraine and throughout this Ukrainian conflict, that they have replaced the leadership more than once, right? And they've moved people around to be in charge of nuclear assets, or they move people out of some of those positions based on maybe their willingness or unwillingness to cooperate with those who are making the decisions. So these are all things that you need to keep in mind right now because it's very rare for six leadership positions to be let go from our nuclear assets, basically, right? Just things to consider. So we're either planning on moving forward in this conflict to the point where government officials at some level decided they needed fresh leadership in these positions in order to move past whatever obstacles they were receiving, or maybe a simulation occurred where these people weren't willing to turn the key, and that was unacceptable based on the fact that if we are in nuclear war, we can't have the white knight deciding that we're going to be the better person and not nuke the rest of the planet because I guess it kind of the purpose of mutually assured destruction, right? So, and we've all seen those movies. I mean, there's plenty of great almost nuclear war movies where someone just said, "No, I won't do it," and then turns out it was like a hoax or who knows what else, and no one actually gets nuked, and it all works out for the best, right? But a good one I can think of, I believe, was called Dawn's Early Light, with Booth Powers, and it was about a B-1 stealth bomber squadron that was under the person that we were at nuclear war. So there's a lot of interesting concepts regarding that, but this is just something to keep in mind because, in my opinion, just based on our current situation and the current environment, this wartime environment that we're all residing in right now, you make leadership changes for only a few reasons, and there's a good chance that those people are moving close to needing someone else to do the job. Best way for me to say it, I guess. Let's see here. So, um, the audio and the video is bad. Lots of complaints in the chat for the audio. See, and how many different times can I switch the microphone around? Like this is getting crazy. I might have to just figure out if it's my internet or something else. Maybe it's just not streaming the audio through properly. Maybe it's StreamYard because that's who I use to do the presentation in the way that I do. So I got to do some research because before I was using a relatively decent microphone and that wasn't working either. But you know what? We're going to plug it in and try one more time because it might be the saving grace at this time. This was the one I used last week that everyone was upset about. But, maybe I just need to give it a shot. So let's try it. Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Now we're going to not let you adjust my microphone level. All right. Can you guys hear me now? I think you can, right? Hold on. There we go. Here, can you hear me? I hope it's better. Okay. All right. We're just gonna go with it. This is where we're at tonight. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. Okay. All right. All right. We're doing it. I appreciate you all sticking with me while we get through these little technical difficulties. There's really no reason for them to exist. I'm using a relatively powerful computer here, so I don't know what else to say. And yeah, I've got high speed internet. I might live in rural North Dakota, but I got great internet, to be completely honest with you. I have no problem gaming or anything else. So, not really sure what's going on here. All right. Yardbirds liked it better scrambled. It felt more like an encrypted message, right? Like we're trying to get through some type of, digital encryption that was being used by the enemy. So, all right. Now, let's go ahead and keep going. All right. Well, we also know there are other players within the world stage right now that are causing some problems. And we know that one of them might be China. Okay. US warns China that helping Russia in war in Ukraine would alienate it from the world. So the United States is saying that you better not give arms to Russia, China. If you do, it's going to cause a lot of problems. Now, here's the thing. Okay. And here, we'll just really quickly to be formal about it. Okay. President Joe Biden's top national security advisor said Sunday that the White House had not yet seen China provide Russia with lethal assistance in its war on Ukraine and warned Beijing that doing so would be against its interests. We have not seen China yet provide military equipment to Russia for purposes of fighting the war in Ukraine. We haven't seen it yet, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said on NBC News. Meet the press. We're continuing to watch. We'll stay vigilant, as President Biden said. But so far, we haven't seen it, Sullivan said. Sullivan added, I don't think it's in China's interest to do this. Okay, now that I've gotten my reporter voice out of the way, here's what you need to understand. Okay, and when I say that, I hope you guys understand. Like, this is my point of view. It's my perspective that I'm putting out there. It's not like some dictionary definition as to what's exactly happening right here. I'm not Carmen San Diego, right? I can't, unravel all the mystery for everybody else. But here we are. Okay. What I want you to keep in mind here is that, first off, they said we have not yet seen China provide military equipment to Russia for the purposes of fighting in the war in Ukraine. Okay. That doesn't mean that China doesn't give Russia military equipment. All that means is that what they are giving them, they haven't seen yet being used in Ukraine. Okay. So that'd be like us giving, Poland, nuclear weapons right on the border, and then just being like, well, look, they haven't been used in Ukraine, so it doesn't really matter, right? So understand that, yes, China could easily be giving Russia tons of weaponry, and we just haven't seen it yet, okay? So they didn't say that China gave them any weapons at all. They just said they're not giving them weapons specifically for the purpose of fighting the war in Ukraine. So understand that China's already doing this, right? Then the other thing we have to keep in mind is that we say, I don't think it's in China's interest to do this. You know what? We got to be honest with ourselves here. We got to be frank about these issues we're having. China doesn't care what we think is in their best interest. China knows that they can just do whatever they want because they have the entire planet by the balls, right? They can literally do whatever they want because they control all major manufacturing at this point in time. Yeah, of course, there's other ways to provide products and stuff from other places. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to the world as a whole, trying to get cheap goods that they can then supply to their citizens so that the people who have less income and have a lower quality of life are able to still gain some of the products that they desire. China does that. That's what China does, right? So China isn't too worried about what we think. Okay, I really don't think so. Oh, are we their biggest customer? Well, of course. But you know what? They can sell all their stuff no problem to anybody else. Maybe not as much money. I don't know. All I'm trying to say is we're talking a lot, but I don't think China cares. Okay. And if you want some proof to China possibly not caring, right? Well, let's talk about how they just intercepted us in the Pacific. All right. Chinese jet armed with missiles intercepts U.S. aircraft over South China Sea. Chinese jet armed with missiles settled a few hundred feet from the wing of a U.S. patrol aircraft and escorted it for 15 minutes before turning away over the South China Sea. This is from India Today. Okay, sometimes I gotta find news sources that aren't from the United States to try to get that other perspective on the issue, right? Because if you get a news source from the United States about China intercepting a United States aircraft, there's going to be some kind of bias involved there. And even if the bias is negative toward the United States, it's just good to get that secondary perspective at times just to kind of understand how the rest of the world is interpreting this information, right? So, a Chinese J-11 fighter jet armed with air-to-air missiles intercepted a U.S. patrol aircraft near the Paracel Islands over the South China Sea on Friday. The U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon was flying 21,500 feet over the South China Sea when the pilot saw a Chinese jet with a red star on the tail fins and the missiles it was armed with. The Chinese jet, which settled a few hundred feet from the wing of the U.S. aircraft, estimated for 15 minutes before turning away. The U.S. patrol aircraft received a message from China's People's Liberation Army. American aircraft, Chinese airspace is 12 nautical miles away. Not approaching anymore, or you bear all responsibility. Okay? So, I'm just saying, China claims virtually the entire South China Sea. Okay? And we know that's true. Ask any of those other countries in that region. They will tell you that's how China operates. 100%. Okay? Now, all I'm saying is that they're not messing around either. Okay? So, do they care that much about what we think on it? I'm not sure. But what I can say is that there's an interesting video, and I won't play the sound just because sometimes that causes issues. I don't know. But interesting video of that particular jet flying right next to that Poseidon aircraft. And yeah, I mean, it's close. It's close. And it says it got within 20 feet, which caused the Poseidon aircraft to take evasive maneuvers. So this is all happening. Like these things are just happening at this point, right? This isn't normal behavior. I'm not just doing this on a regular basis generally. This is the state of the world right now. And I think everybody should be aware of just where we are in regards to that, because in all honesty, it's not improving, right? We're seeing a escalation on every front all over the planet. And then we also have things like power grid collapse, which we're still getting to. I promise. I told you there's a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. U.S. looks to expand Taiwan military training. Sources, okay? February 23rd. The United States is set to expand the number of troops helping train Taiwanese forces. Two U.S. officials said on Thursday at a time of heightened tensions between Washington and Beijing. Reuters reported in 2021 that a small number of U.S. Special Operations forces have been rotating into Taiwan on a temporary basis to train their forces. The official, speaking on condition of activity, said that the Pentagon was expecting to increase that number in the coming months. All right. One of the officials said the exact number of increased troops was unclear, but the move was unrelated to recent tensions over the shoot down of a Chinese spy balloon which flew across the United States. I agree with that statement, actually. I don't think they're worried about that spy balloon compared to how much they're more worried about Taiwan being invaded at any point in time here. So I'm sure the balloon didn't necessarily have an effect on this particular decision. It was kind of silly for them to pull that into the conversation because clearly someone in the press was trying to go with it, right? The balloon caused a political uproar, blah, 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 blah. We don't have a comment on specific operations, engagements, or training, but I would highlight that our support for and defense relationship with Taiwan remains aligned against the current threat posed by the People's Republic of China, a Pentagon spokesman said. So understand, we are continually poking the bear when it comes to China. And how do you poke the dragon? I'm not sure, because we all know Russia's the bear, right? So there's a lot of different, animalistic symbology going on here that I don't think we can keep track of. But all I'm trying to say is we're still going. We're still going. Okay. Now here's a spicy one, and this is spicy. I don't want to get too crazy on this one. You know how things are in the world of the internet these days. It's a little spicy, so let's talk about it. There's some spice on it for you. Okay. China response: U.S. report endorsing lab leak theory accuses U.S. of smearing China. By the way, I'm just reading the news, all right? Oh, man. The U.S. Department of Energy and the FBI have endorsed the lab leak theory. This is so interesting, isn't it? I wouldn't have ever guessed. China accused the U.S. of attempting to smear the country after a Sunday report from the U.S. Department of Energy found that COVID-19 most likely leaked from a lab. This is just the news, okay? I'm not, coming up with any crazy theories or anything. I'm just reading the news. Reporters pressed Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning about the report during a Monday meeting. Mao dismissed the report, however, citing the much criticized joint China investigation into the origins of the virus. The origin tracing of SARS-CoV-2 is about science and should not be politicized. China has always supported and participated in global science-based origin tracing method, Monday. The laboratory origin of the pandemic was considered to be extremely unlikely. The science-based authoritative conclusion reached by the WHO China joint mission after field trips to the lab in Wuhan and close communication with researchers. It was accurately recorded in the mission report and has received extensive recognition from the international community. Okay. Regardless. Okay. Just be aware that this is not going to help relations at all. We're already in a bad spot when it comes to relations, and that's not good for relations. And in fact, if it is coming out that that's all reasonable at this point, which before it was clearly unreasonable, keep in mind that there could be more to this too. Like sometimes leaks aren't always accidental. I don't know. Like, things happen sometimes. So I don't know. I'm not a scientist. So, I'm just some guy who read the news and had no opinion on the matter at all, actually. Literally didn't try to put a spin on it at all. I read it straight from the website as you saw. So, yeah. Anyway, so someone saying my mic might be directional. So I'm still cutting out. I don't know what to do at this point, guys. I'm trying my best, all right? Maybe I have a data throttling issue. I guess so. I apologize, everybody. Look, the mic is like right in my face. Like I think I can put it much closer. And it is, a condenser mic, but it's pointed right at me. So I'm doing what I can here. I swear. I appreciate it. Now, we also have more in that region. I know it just keeps going. I'm trying my best. So let's see here. U.S. South Korea plan for potential nuclear strike by North Korea. Well, this is normal, right? February 23rd, 2023. These are just normal routine things that we do lately. The U.S. and South Korea held discussions over ways they would respond to possible nuclear attacks by North Korea, which has been steadily building up its capability to deliver a credible atomic strike against the two. The so-called tabletop exercise held in Washington focused on the hypothetical scenarios of North Korea's use of nuclear weapons. The Pentagon said in a statement late Thursday. They were the first of their sort since the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol took office about a year ago and bolstered joint military exercises with the U.S., a move that angered Pyongyang and led it to step up its provocations. Both sides discussed various options to demonstrate the alliance's strong response capabilities and resolve to respond appropriately to any DPRK nuclear use. So it's not just about deterrent of North Korean aggression. It's not just about the possibility of a North Korean invasion. They're literally concerned about North Korea nuking South Korea. So that's what they're trying to do. Man, I'm trying my best, and I appreciate everybody hanging out with me here. I really do. And now the microphone's clipping. Oh man, and we've been doing this for like what, a year? Okay, there you go. I'm hoping that it's supposed to automatically, envelope it now at a certain audio level. We're not going to have any more issues because I said so. Okay, do your job, microphone, please. All right. Anyway, let's see. So, North Korea was mad about the whole thing. They were so mad that they fired some missiles. No big deal. North Korea fires 4 cruise missiles as U.S. and South Korea stage tabletop nuclear drills. So, no reason to be concerned about North Korea nuking you because they fire missiles when you're concerned about them nuking you. Like, this is the state of the world right now. Like, look, it feels like this is just how things are now, right? So we're all just like going to the grocery store, going to the post office, going to work, grabbing a beer, whatever it is. And, North Korea fired 4 missiles, as the U.S. and South Korea were training to deal with a nuclear attack from them. No big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is where we are now on the world stage, and it's insane. It really is. And it's easy to kind of just absorb this information and be like, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, people really need to chill. But unfortunately, they're not chilling. And in fact, it's getting much, much worse. But every day, because we're getting that trickle of information, like a year ago, this would have been like, holy crap, I can't believe this is happening. And then now we're like, well, yeah, it's North Korea. So just be aware of that. Try to like remove your normalcy bias if you can, just because it's easy for that to dictate everything about what you have going on. Okay. So North Korea said it launched 4 long-range cruise missiles off its eastern coast as part of a series of deadly nuclear counterattack drills, just a day after the U.S. and South Korea held their own simulated exercises. 4 hostile 2 strategic cruise missiles flew for 3 hours, flying a distance of 2,000 kilometers each on Thursday, North Korean state media said. South Korea's and Japan's militaries, which are often the first to spot and publicly report such launches, did not immediately announce the detection of the missile test before Pyongyang disclosed it. The launches came as the U.S. and South Korea staged a simulated exercise to sharpen their joint response to potential nuclear weapon used by North Korea. You see what I'm saying? Here we are. We're worried they're going to nuke us. Oh, they're over here trying to protect themselves from us nuking them. We're going to shoot missiles, right? These things, where do you turn it off, right? Going back to the original part of our conversation, when Russia runs out of resources to shut off, where do we go, right? When we can't stop doing drills. So if we keep training for a possible nuclear strike from North Korea, and then North Korea responds by shooting missiles every time we train for it, and then we need to train more because now they're shooting missiles. You see what I'm saying? Like, you see how this all just builds on itself? It's not something this is not just regular everyday stuff, okay? And I'm trying my best to kind of put it into a digestible package for everybody, right? Because it's a lot, it's a lot to have to consider. All right. So let's see here. Robert Von Dart says, yes, they run out of missiles. I guess, but you know what? One thing I'll say is that like 3 or 4 years ago, it felt like, man, North Korea can barely even launch a missile. And now they're just like, yeah, we just launched 4, whatever. Right? Like, so these countries do actually progress and move their technology forward, whether or not we like to admit it. And I know that's a lot of the I don't know, maybe overconfidence that we have when it comes to seeing what is going on between Russia and Ukraine right now. We watch Russia and we're like, man, they're using this old equipment. It's falling apart. They're giving their troops crap, equipment, and everything's crap, and these guys just like bit off more than they can chew. And then it's like, yeah, but how much stuff are they not using? I don't know. That's the thing. So underestimating your enemy is how you lose a war, right? So we should never underestimate any of these countries, especially nuclear capable countries, because it's a trump card in many ways. You might have a terrible military in the sense of your manpower, but hey, if you can drop a few nukes, oh well, right? So, Cowboy in the Jungle, not firing missiles at U.S. ships, just firing missiles as a display of power. Okay. I guess that's what I wanted to mention there. John Doe, we're all in this boat together. Let's treat each other with respect and focus on our common goals. I agree. Let's just do the best we can. We all don't have to agree on everything, right? We all don't have to be exactly the same, but we do need to prepare, and we do need to have a way to network and build community, because at some point that might not be a possibility, right? And that's what we're trying to avoid. Hey, Northern Girl Hobbies, good to see you. And I do want to say thank you to you for modding. Thank you to Exile Reviews as well. I appreciate when you guys are here. It matters. So, Pure Blood Prepper says, we give away a lot of our supply. Yes, a lot of our supply is being not just given away, but used up, right? And we've gone over the numbers before, but the amount of time it takes to just even make more Javelin missiles is a very long time, like 24 months out at this point. So just keep that in mind. The more we use, the less we have, right? All right, let's see here. I want to go ahead and jump over to the next topic, because the grid collapse is something we have to discuss, okay? So we finally made it there. But I wanted to get through all those updates from what happened this past week, because there's a lot of stuff going on. And you might have known about 85% of that, but maybe 15% you didn't know about, and maybe that gave you some more information so that you could be a little bit more either strategic or motivated about what you're going to do moving forward, right? So that was my goal there, and hopefully gave you something to work with, because it's a lot. There's a lot happening, and it's easy to let things slide under the radar, and especially some of the stuff that just came out today, like the North Dakota Nuclear Command letting some of their leadership go. I mean, to me, that's indicative of quite a few different possibilities, and all of them are not good, right? Like, I really doubt that the whole purpose of that leadership change was like, oh, well, we just found better people. We found like 6 people who are just more qualified, so we're going to throw them in there because like we just need the best of the best, right? I find that to be the least likely scenario, probably. So, what's the most likely scenarios? Well, I think the things we discussed earlier, to me, seem more relevant to the current situation. So, go ahead. And and of course, I do have to mention the channel's biggest sponsor is Midway USA. I really do appreciate them helping me do what I do over here now. Look, I know that everyone's like, man, you talk about them in every video now. That's because they're the sponsor of the channel. Yes, and honestly, I'm very blessed and grateful for it because it's not something I would have ever expected to have the opportunity to work with Midway USA or a company of that caliber, right? So really excited about it, and they are allowing me to have a lot more access to things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to access. So a big shout out and a big thank you to them, and a big shout out and thank you to every single one of you. Because honestly, if you guys didn't show up here on Monday nights, I wouldn't either. So you're here, which means I am also here, and we're doing this thing, right? So I really appreciate all of you as well. You know what? It's one of those things where uh, we're all in this together, like John Doe said. And man, we have got to really keep it together because there's not a lot of people out there who are willing to put their time and effort and energy into being ready for these types of things, right? And we're going to have a lot on our plates as regular people because, you know what? Regardless of how we feel right this second, there's going to be people who want our help and support. And man, as good human beings, which I assume a lot of us are, it's going to be very hard to like turn anyone away that might need that help if we are able to provide it, right? So, very difficult position we're going to find ourselves in. In all honesty, I'm just trying to be 100% honest. It's going to be very hard to tell someone no. It's also going to be very hard to say yes, right? So, that's why we do what we can where we are with what we have. Okay. So what else is going on with this power grid collapse? Why are we worried about that? Oh, I don't know if you know what's going on in South Africa, but it's something to keep an eye on, right? Because it can happen anywhere. South Africa is a modernized nation. Yes, they have their issues, but they aren't, like a third world country. Like they are a modernized society in most ways, I guess. Anyway, stockpile food and water. I mean, right to the punch. They're just not even going to try to, sugarcoat it. Stockpile food and water. South Africa faces civil war conditions if power grid collapses. Do you think any other modernized nation would face civil war conditions if the power grid collapsed? I don't know. Should you stockpile food and water? I probably. Are we also going to talk about the fact that our grid has some of the same issues that theirs does, and also the fact that our grid is under attack in many, many ways? Oh, yes, we are. But first, let's talk about what's going on in South Africa so that you can at least see what's happening to a country right this second and anticipate what might happen here because they're experiencing like grid down, like blackout, grid down scenario. Yeah, that's South Africa right now, right? And that's like our worst nightmare, okay? A country of 60 million is on the verge of collapse amid rolling blackouts and warnings of civil war scale unrest, okay? South Africa is on the verge of collapse amid rolling blackouts and warnings a total power grid failure could lead to mass rioting on the scale of a civil war. Western embassies, including the United States and Australia, have advised their citizens of the country to stock up on several days worth of food and water and be on high alert during extended blackouts sweeping the country. South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, declared a national state of disaster on February 9th in response to the record electricity shortage, which has seen state-owned power company Eskom, institute rolling blackouts, dubbed load shedding, lasting up to 12 hours in some cases. Now, keep this in mind. Rolling blackouts, dubbed load shedding, right? So load shedding sounds better than rolling blackouts, but they mean the same thing, right? It's a euphemism. They're trying to say load shedding because it makes it feel like it's a controlled environment, right? We're just shedding the load. We're making it work, right? Rolling blackouts sounds like things are getting a little chaotic, right? So you use load shedding because it makes people feel like you still have some kind of handle on the situation. My opinion, rolling blackouts is the terminology we're going to move forward with because it applies to us here in the United States. What load shedding, I like how they use quotations there, right? In South Africa looks and sounds like Urban Square Century City Mall, Cape Town, South Africa, 4:07 a.m. on February 15th, 2023. The electricity from Eskom, the city-owned power company, cuts out and the private generators kick in, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and let this play. I'm going to turn off the sound because, we're not trying to have have too much of a good thing here while we're on a live stream, because that is an issue. But I'm going to let this play just for a second here, and you're going to see in just a minute what this really looks at. Because look, some of you here have easily lived through a power outage. I know many of us have, of course, but it's a lot of preppers don't necessarily live in like an urban environment. And when this power goes out, I mean, it is dark, like real dark. Do you see how dark it became in the middle of a major city? Yeah, things get real scary when the lights don't come back on and that's happening. Now here's all the generators kicking back on, and they're all privatized generator systems that people are relying on at this point. But yes, they're receiving power back on. But that darkness that we just witnessed them experience, that would be permanent in a full grid down situation, which they are anticipating here in South Africa at this time, okay? Rolling blackouts, load shedding are occurring throughout South Africa, which are affecting private residences, businesses, municipal lighting, traffic lights, and hotels, right? I mean, this is crazy, in my opinion anyway. You guys can tell me in the chat if you think it's crazy. Blackouts can also affect water availability, internet connectivity, mobile phone network coverage, fuel availability, residential security features, and food supply. You mean a grid down scenario can affect every single aspect of your life that you currently rely on? Yeah. And this is happening like in this country right now. This is not like just theory anymore. We're not just discussing the possibility of a grid down scenario. If you're in South Africa, you're on the precipice of a grid down situation. Okay? Stockpile food and water. Like legit. Stockpile it. Get 72 hours worth of supplies. Thanks, U.S. Embassy. I'm sure a full grid down scenario will be over with in 3 days. Totally. Yeah. Because like whatever causes it won't have any irreparable damage, right? Like, come on, man. 3 days. I mean, they're just trying their best to not make people freak out. Because you have to understand, if the United States came in and said, if you're in South Africa right now, you need 6 months worth of food and water on hand or you'll die, right? Like they can't do that. So 72 hours, right? You know what's great about 72 hours? I don't know if you guys know this or not, but what's fun about 72 hours is that's usually the amount of time that the government can try to like figure something out before everyone panics. And regardless of anything after 72 hours, like panic is there and we're done. It's too late now. Right? So just keep that in mind. They're not necessarily worried about you living for those 72 hours and then getting back to normal life. They just need you to chill out for 72 hours while they try to figure something else out. Because if they can't, it's over anyway. Right? We all know that that's kind of like the 9 meals to anarchy situation. Weird how that's exactly 3 days. Weird. Anyway, understand this is what's happening in South Africa right now. And it's not just, the country being like, oh man, this is possibly happening, right? No, we have their business sector is very concerned about it also, okay? Businesses prepare for grid collapse in South Africa. This is from the 26th of February. This is not like old news. This is all coming out right now. In light of the unsustainable stages of load shedding, rolling blackouts, key industries within South Africa's business sectors have been preparing for a total grid collapse to keep staff safe and services running. While the South African Reserve Bank, SARB, stressed that it is unlikely that a regional or national grid failure could occur, higher and longer stages of load shedding have sparked fears among industries such as telecom, retail, mining, and financial service sectors, with many executing scenario planning in case of a total grid collapse. Oh, the banking industry wouldn't be able to operate in a grid down scenario. I wonder if that could cause any problems. In South Africa, companies that provide communications, banking, and food have installed backup power and accelerated their planning for even deeper power cuts, said the Sunday Times. According to the publication's report, MTN, which is, I think, their mobile telephone network or something like that, has set up war rooms to ensure critical sites remain operational, and the JSE has enough diesel to run its operations for 7 days. So great. They've got a week once the grid collapses. Over the course of the last year, MTN deployed more than 2,000 generators to counter stage 4 and higher load shedding. The telecom company said that the constant pressure of power outages requires 24-hour monitoring, and it had put power contingencies in place in all provinces. Like, this is the preamble to a full-on grid collapse. Like, this is how this is the graph, like the curve, right? Like, we are like down here at no grid collapse, and like they're just like and we're right on the edge before it just falls down and does the freaking free fall. Okay, so All I'm saying is that they are putting generators everywhere. Even the mines have generators. Even the bank has generators, okay? And they're all worried about a grid collapse. The most financially sound industries in that country think that the grid is going to fully collapse, right? The banking industry, the telecom industry, the mining industry, like that's big, big money. And they're not putting their bets on the power company to just figure it out. They're literally buying thousands of generators and stockpiling probably just ridiculous amounts of diesel in order to hopefully keep things running. And in some cases for at least a week, right? So this is happening. And then they're also worried about the safety of their employees because they know a total grid failure is also extremely dangerous. So they're worried about that too. And it is just a really crazy situation to kind of keep an eye on. All right. And just so everybody knows, okay, I wanted to give you kind of like that base level definition as to like what's occurring there. Okay. In South Africa, shedding load is done to prevent the failure of the entire system when the demand for the electricity strains the capacity of Eskom's power generating system. Load shedding is characterized by periods of widespread national level rolling blackouts. Okay. I wanted to specifically say that to everybody so that you could be aware of the fact that these things can happen. Okay. Now, could that happen here in the United States? 100%. Of course it could. Do you want to know why? Well, let's talk about it. So remember, we said load shedding was the same as rolling blackouts, right? We literally do that here because our grid can't handle it. Freezing temps across U.S. prompt utility companies to implement rolling blackouts and order customers to cut energy use. This is from December of 2022, right? But we all know there's rolling blackouts in the summer months. We all know there's rolling blackouts in the winter months. We have rolling blackouts as a normal part of our life. But maybe what's happening in South Africa right now should tell us that we're just on a different tier of grid collapse than they are, right? We haven't gotten as far advanced in that collapse scenario as they have quite yet. But watching what's happening there should tell us what path we're on, because we already cannot sustain the demand of electricity in this country. We already implement load shedding or rolling blackouts, which are the same exact thing, in order to preserve the grid and keep it from completely failing. So what we're learning from South Africa is that these rolling blackouts and everything else is a preventative measure to keep the grid from completely failing, which we already knew. But now we're watching South Africa show us that even with rolling blackouts and load shedding, eventually you're going to probably hit the point of failure no matter what, because demand only goes up. That's it. Okay. U.S. power companies are using rolling blackouts to conserve energy due to the winter storm. The Tennessee Valley Authority and PJM Interconnection are asking customers to reduce power use. Planned intermittent interruptions support system reliability, the TVA said in a statement. I mean, we can go on and on in this article, but all I'm trying to bring to your attention is that we already have rolling blackouts here in the United States. And also, don't forget, our power grid is totally under attack all the time. The Gately report, Impero Software says U.S. power grid attacks likely in the months ahead. Whoa, February 20th. Wait, that's like very recent. Exactly. And that's why we need to pay attention to this, okay? Oakland, California has declared a state of emergency in response to a ransomware attack. U.S. power grid attacks, including cyber attacks, are likely to increase this year as malicious actors are realizing just how vulnerable and exploitable it truly is. That's according to Paul Hafen, cybersecurity expert at Impero Software Solutions. It provides cybersecurity in the public sector, including school districts, as well as secure remote connect from device to device. According to Politico, citing a top cybersecurity executive, hackers tied to Russia last year got close to knocking out a major portion of the U.S. power grid, and the malware they used is still out there. The attack occurred early in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Hackers deployed malicious software to try to take down around a dozen U.S. electric and liquid natural gas sites. Now, we talked about this last week, but here's what I want you to remember is that Russia tried to do this at the beginning of the war, before we were just pumping money and equipment into Ukraine. Do you think they've given up? Or are they trying to figure out a better way to do it this time? I mean, you let me know. U.S. power grid vulnerable to both cyber and physical attacks.
The power grid is vulnerable to both cyber and physical attacks, which are on the rise. Earlier this month, the U.S. Justice Department charged a leader, because I know that there are words that will cause issues sometimes, and is associated with plotting to attack Baltimore's power grid, according to Reuters. I don't care. Anyway, these people are what we call advanced persistent threats, APTs. These APTs are slow, low, and incognito, he said. They use tactics, techniques, and procedures and indicators of compromise, IOCs, which are basically malware. I don't know if I'm expecting more this year, but my antennae are up. It's top of mind with everybody, Hafen said. There's been a lot of news about it. There's precedent for it. We've seen it in Ukraine. A lot of people have geopolitical focus are saying Ukraine is a test bed for an attack on the United States. Ah, that's interesting, isn't it? For foreign actors, that's the little leagues, and they're looking to come to the big leagues. And in more smaller regional ways, there's been attacks. So when there's a precedent, that makes the possibility of another one or a bigger one all the more likely in the minds of the people. In addition, the federal government has announced its efforts to ramp up grid security and what it still needs to do to safeguard it, he said. So all of that information together with the precedent makes a lot of us concerned that we are not without risk, Hafen said. Okay. We all know the risk of a cyber attack. We all know how vulnerable our critical infrastructure is. And South Africa isn't even, we don't know this, okay? We don't know this. But South Africa, at least to my knowledge, isn't necessarily suffering from a cyber attack on their grid. They just have too much demand. And that's it. That's all it took. And they're literally on the edge of a total grid collapse. So do you think that could happen here? I definitely do. And I don't like the idea of it, but it does seem like we're heading in that direction, doesn't it? So what do we do about it? Well, obviously, we continue to prepare. And we keep in mind that we may either be without power or have to have alternative power sources. So one of the videos I'll be working on here in the relative future, like very soon, in the next week or two, you'll see it, is actually like I've put together an EMP-proof power unit, which is only EMP-proof in the sense that it's not being used until an EMP happens, and then it might be the only power unit I have accessible afterward because it was well protected, right? Now, of course, we can protect as many power units as we want and everything else, but it is true that things that aren't in use and can be fully sealed within an EMP protective Faraday bag or cage will more likely survive a situation than something that's currently in use and being powered, right? So I'll be sharing that with everybody here in the relative future, because although this backup power system endeavor is never necessarily cheap, right? It's an expensive endeavor to put together a power station with solar capabilities that's protected from an EMP that can actually power some of your larger electronics throughout an emergency situation. Like, that's not an easy task to accomplish in the sense of a financial challenge, right? But I'm trying my best to kind of just at least show an example of what that looks like, to give people ideas about what can be done, because that's kind of where we're at right now. Like, not only do we have to worry about the grid collapsing, but then there's the existential threats of an EMP or something like that, especially with a World War III scenario occurring. Then we also have the cyber attack aspect, which could take out the grid and create a World War III scenario simultaneously. So all of these things are kind of interconnected. And so, yes, having access to power in some form or fashion post whatever event creates a scenario where we don't have it will likely be very useful. And of course, like, an entire home solar unit is very useful as well, but unfortunately extremely expensive and very vulnerable to an EMP, right? And even if you have EMP protection, something other than like a Faraday cage or bag, you can't necessarily guarantee it's going to work. Like, you literally don't know if it's going to actually work until an EMP happens. And yeah, you can say that about the Faraday bags and cages as well, although there's been a lot more testing with those that can be done in a way that's a little bit more, I guess, indicative of its performance than what you can do with something that's supposedly just going to absorb the EMP from like your entire home, right? Like, of course, is it possible that it will work? Of course. I just don't know for a fact it will or won't, right? And I think that's the hardest part when it comes to this type of conversation, is like, we just don't know. So we just do the best we can and hope for the best if that ever occurs. But having contingencies is a good idea. So yeah, having backup power will be important. If you choose to use something like a fuel powered generator, I would suggest getting something that's at least dual fuel. So you could use propane just because it stores so much better than gasoline. And, if you only have access to a gas generator, then I would make sure you have some additional gas and then maybe use some fuel stabilizer to make sure it stores for longer. There's a lot of different approaches we can take. I mean, if you're a handy person and you just know what you're up to and you can make like a wood gasifier or something like that and just get it going, like a power to you, and like these are projects that I've looked into and that I would like to try to accomplish at some point here in the future as well. But man, like, that kind of mechanical stuff isn't necessarily my area of expertise. So, power to you if you're into that kind of stuff and you're good at it. But we're just where we are right now, and I think reviewing the information and reviewing our position in the sense of geopolitics and global threats and everything else keeps us grounded in why we do what we do, right? And watching what's happening in places like South Africa right now is extremely informational, right? And it's like, I don't want to benefit from anybody else's suffering because that's exactly what it will be there if the grid actually fully collapses. Will be lots of suffering. In fact, the people there are probably suffering right this second because of the rolling blackouts, let alone a full-on total grid collapse. But if these things are happening, no matter what we do, we at least need to do the best we can to learn from what's happening there. We can at least look at timelines. We can look at patterns. We can see what people are doing to adapt to the current situation. Very much like what we can do with Ukraine right now. They're under foreign invasion. How are the people adapting to being under foreign invasion? How are they getting around? How are they able to access potable water? What is it they're doing to stay warm, right? These are all things that we can do that don't cost anything, that we can just review information on and say, okay, that actually is how that went down. Now I have a good idea as to what would happen here if the same thing occurred, right? And especially in a total grid collapse scenario, as much as I would hate for that to happen in South Africa, because we all know what the end result of something like that would be, at least we would look at it and say, okay, after 4 or 5 days is when X, Y, and Z started. Or here's what led up to that eventual collapse. And like the day or two before looked like this, which tells us what to watch out for if it's ever in our neck of the woods, right? There's a lot of information we can glean from this stuff. So that's exactly why we have these conversations. It's not just to be like, oh, we're scared and we need to go prepare. And, I get those comments quite a bit. It's something that I think we can talk about real quick here is people will say, oh, you're look how scared you are. You're out, trying to learn things and you're out trying to buy stuff. And like, they got you scared, huh? And it's like, I'm not scared. Like, I'm not afraid. Like, that's not my persistent state, right? I'm not afraid, but I'm just a logical person who can say, no, this looks like it could be a problem. And I want to be able to deal with the problem if it ever comes up, right? That's it. That's all it comes down to. And the more I prepare, the less afraid I am because I'm so much more prepared now than I was before that if anything happens, I'm way better than I was before. So every day that I add to my preps, every day that I'm able to learn something new, every day that I extend my ability to survive is one less day of fear, I guess, is a way of saying it. You understand what I'm trying to say. It's ratioed, right? So look, we're not afraid. If people think preppers are afraid, I think they've got it a little bit backwards because at the end of the day, like we're the ones who are actually prepared. We're not really afraid. We are smart enough to understand what will happen if some of these events occur. And that concerns us because we understand how the people who call us afraid are going to act because they aren't prepared, right? And that's just kind of where it's at, So, Nathaniel Erskine says, I carry a Colt. What do I have to be afraid of? I don't know. I mean, it depends what model. I mean, if it's a Delta Elite, I'm going to say probably nothing. All right. If it's a Python, I'm going to say, you could probably make a good leader. There's a lot of things that we could talk about there. But either way, I really appreciate every single one of you being here. I do want to mention if you guys want to jump in on the Subscribe Star, we're doing some pretty cool stuff over there. I'm just trying my best to kind of keep things relevant moving forward in the sense of having that secondary members only platform, just because we do a lot of like it allows like direct communication and a more casual platform to just discuss whatever it is, right? And I post like silly stuff over there sometimes, like bloopers or whatever, and just talk about things that make me mad or who knows what else. But I appreciate anyone who's willing to support that. And I do like a monthly preparedness incentive where I either can send something to someone of value, so that way they can be more prepared, and it's just kind of like part of being in the community there. And like this month, I actually have some cool morale patches I'm sending out. So I'm doing my best here. I'm trying to like kind of figure out how all of that works because we also have like the channel memberships, which are very appreciated, and I appreciate anyone who's willing to like help support what I do here because it's a big moving machine. Like I want to go to places like Costco, which is 4 hours from me, and buy up what I would consider a good prepper haul in the sense of like, all right, if I had $500 to spend at Costco, what's the best I can do in the sense of long-term food storage, right? But, I also have a family, and it is hard to just come up with like $500, so you guys supporting me allows me to do those types of things. And this summer, I'll be doing some traveling, which will be cool. I'll be able to like meet some other YouTubers. I've already talked to a couple of people in the preparedness community that I should be able to link up with. And I also am trying to get out and do some interesting things too, like visit maybe some missile silos, or maybe go check out like a bunker community. Like there's some cool stuff on the agenda, but it all becomes expensive. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like it just does. So I appreciate all of you very much in that sense. Here, 1 second. Just because, I want to make sure like you guys get to check it out. Like this is what we're working with for the Subscribe Star this month. Like something really simple and basic, but it's like, it's part of the team basically. Like, so it's $5 a month, but I'm trying my best to make sure that like that's worth your time, and then allows me to thank you in a way that has some weight to it. And at the same time, the only reason why things have moved over there is because Patreon has been weird in the past when it comes to 2A content. Patreon's been weird when it comes to content surrounding people who aren't able to vote or join the military or own a home, if you know what I mean. And at the same time, moving on from there, it's just another platform for me to exist on in case things just don't work out here, if you know what I mean, because that could just happen too. So, but I appreciate all of you. I really do. Let's see. Cowboy in the Jungle. I do have a P.O. box. So if you go on my website, I'm pretty sure it has my P.O. box on there. You just kind of have to scroll down to like the I think the contact page maybe has it. Let's see. I'm trying my best to find that for you right now because, it is one of those things. But if it's not on there, I'll make sure to put it on there in a place that is a little bit easier to access. You can also email me at magicprepper or magicprepper@gmail.com. I don't get to every single message, unfortunately, guys, so I apologize. But I get a lot of messages, like a ridiculous amount of messages, which is great. But I'm just a guy. I don't have a team, I don't have a secretary or anything. So I do the best I can to respond when I can with who I can respond to. And then I'm sorry if I don't get to you, but you can always reach out again. Like it won't make me upset. I'll just do my best. Okay. So that's the best I can say on that. Cause it's a lot of work, man. It's more work than I anticipated. I'm not going to lie to everybody. Like, it's got some work to be had, I guess is the best way to say it. Probably the worst way to say it, in all honesty. So I guess if you go to my terms of service page, you can actually find my P.O. box on there. So and you have to scroll down to the bottom of the website, magicprepper.com, and then the P.O. box is on the terms of service page. So there you go. All right. So hopefully that helps you out. And I will mention this real quick. People have said, well, I found you on the internet and I can find where you live and stuff. It's the internet, man. You can find anybody and find out anything about anybody if you want to. If you're doing that much work to try to find me, maybe you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart to say, well, I could find you and I want to help you protect yourself more by not being able to be so easily found, right? But honestly, at this point, like, I'm more concerned about getting ready for these existential threats than I am about just people creeping on me on the internet. And if you really want to creep on me and you're trying to like come here to see me in person, like it's not going to go very well. I'll tell you that much right now. And there's a reason why I put a little more emphasis into some of the training that I do rather than, always talking about canning and stuff, because as much as I think that stuff's important and good to do, people are weird, and I don't trust people that try to find me. So keep that in mind, okay? Because yeah, it is what it is. I'm not worried about it in that sense, but like if you make me worried about it, there's going to be some worry on both sides of the aisle. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, yeah, Nathaniel Erskine says you don't want to find him, right? Let's see. I was recommended by Prepper 101. Well, that's cool. Thanks, Steve Candy, and I appreciate you letting me know that. And look, I love this community. There's some great people. Like even Northern Girl Hobby, she has a great channel. She's very good to me in the sense of being a mod. And there's some other great channels here in the chat as well. And I interact with a lot of other channels too to try to promote that networking and that community because like we just need to be cohesive as best we can. And it's very easy for people to kind of go down the rabbit hole and be like, well, I don't like this guy and I don't like this lady and I don't like this and I don't like that. I understand that. Like people have abrasive personalities. Not everybody's going to get along. But as a community, we should just be very supportive because like we need each other. And like I'm a human being, right? I can tell you there's some people I don't necessarily like. That's just how it works. Like I understand 100% when people don't like me. It's just what it is. But I'm not going to try to tear those people down or try to tell other people not to support them because at the end of the day, they're providing something to the community and someone's getting some value from it. Otherwise, they wouldn't really be at a certain level on a social media platform. So, I try to always take that into consideration that, the more positivity we have in this community, the better off we'll be. So, hey, Callie Prepper, thank you so much. I appreciate you being a member. But you know what? Really? I mean, Yardbirds, everyone loves you. Don't worry. You're amazing. But honestly, like I fully appreciate all of you. I really do. And if there's anything else I can do for anyone, I might not be able to, but I'll try. And you guys know where to go. MagicPrepper.com. You can contact me directly there. MX Oldtimer for Brap said, Divide we fall. Exactly. And then, you know what? I mean, let's just do this thing. Let's survive. Right? We're going to get through. That's why we do what we do. And I don't have to worry about anybody else when it comes to preparing because everyone in this chat is doing something to get prepared, even if it's just learning information. So without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.